All right. Thank you for that music, Mo, and welcome everyone again. Welcome to the official opening ceremony of AGF's 2026 National Civic Leadership Training Summit. Um, I am so thrilled to have you all here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Caroline Smith, and I'm the Director of Programs at the Andrew Goodman Foundation, or AGF as we like to call it. You'll hear from me in a few minutes, but I'm pleased to first start with an opening from David Goodman.
Thank you all for joining us tonight from wherever you may be in our great United States of America. Welcome to the 10th Andrew Goodman Foundation National Civic Leadership Training Summit. Many of you heard of Andrew Goodman's story, my older brother, so I won't dwell on it too long, but just for background, on June 21st, 1964, which was a Sunday, a day of rest, and also that year, Father's Day, my brother was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan, along with his co-civil rights workers, James Chaney and Michael Schwerner. This was his first day in Mississippi during what's become known as Freedom Summer, Mississippi Freedom Summer 1964. They were there in Mississippi because they believed in those self-evident truths that democracy should work for all people, not just some. What you may not know is what came before that. Andrew was 20 years old that summer, but his instinct to serve started 5 years earlier when he was 15. He had heard that coal miners in West Virginia were working without health insurance or proper work safety environments, protections that we take for granted today. And he thought that this was terrible. So he got on a bus with a friend and went to West Virginia, which is quite a ways away, and talked to miners himself. He came home and told us and his classmates what he'd seen. He wasn't ready yet to act, but he was listening and learning. And that's the thread running through everything the Andrew Goodman Foundation does. You listen and learn, and then you serve and act. In fact, he was in college, like all of you, at Queens College, whose motto was, "We learn so we may serve." And that's a really important concept. This year, that thread means something particularly important. America turns 250 years old, 250 years ago, since this country made a promise on pieces of parchment paper that all people are created equal, entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. My brother was murdered because he believed that promise was supposed to reflect everyday practice and include everyone. 62 years later, it still isn't finished. This network now reaches 70 college and university campuses in 25 states and Washington, D.C. About 100 of you ambassadors carrying this forward, touching a student population of your peers, about 1 million people. Andrew would not believe it, and still, I don't believe it sometimes today, but here we are. In a few minutes, we're going to recognize some of you directly. The hidden heroes, this network of student ambassadors, champions, and teams have spent this past year doing exactly that work on their own campuses. Stay with us for it. Their stories are the clearest answer I know to the question of whether any of this still matters. And it still matters, I promise you. Before I hand this over, I want to thank the people who built tonight at the Andrew Goodman Foundation, which is the staff who spent months putting this summit together, and our board of directors and advisory board members who make this work possible year after year. Our generous donors, especially our anchor sponsors, the Puffin Foundation and the Kresge Foundation, who fuel our ability to empower young voices nationwide. Most importantly, we thank our campus partners and Vote Everywhere campus teams. None of the impact you see happens without them. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the work you do when sometimes no one's watching, but we all know what we're doing. Let's get started and keep at it. Thank you.
Powerful words from David, as always. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of emoji reactions. Thank you so much, David. We're forever indebted to you for your leadership of AGF. And I believe that Sonia, our board chair, was not able to make it. So I will go ahead and share some remarks on her behalf. As David said, we absolutely want to thank our board members for their time, judgment, and commitment to this work, and my fellow staff members who have spent lots of time leading up to this, preparing the summit and also running this powerful Vote Everywhere network. And we want to thank our sponsors, the Puffin Foundation and the Kresge Foundation, whose support truly made this summit possible. This year, America turns 250. 250 years since this country put a promise on paper that all of us are created equal, entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as we all know, that promise has not been delivered. Every generation has had to fight to make it a little truer than the one before. And that's why the Andrew Goodman Foundation exists, and it's why we're calling this year's summit theme Democracy, the Unfinished Promise. For 60 years, AGF has stood for one idea, that young people, when given the tools and the trust, can be the ones to finish that sentence. Today, the idea is backed by real numbers. Our network reaches 70 campuses in 25 states and Washington, D.C. Over 100 Andrew Goodman ambassadors are leading that work right now, touching a student population of 1 million people. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because students decided democracy was worth their time, their voice, and their labor. I want to name some of that work directly because it deserves to be named. At North Carolina A&T, students organized, testified, and wrote op-eds rather than letting their campus lose its on-campus polling site without a fight. And that is not a small thing. That is democracy, defended by 21-year-olds who decided to handle it themselves, as they do every day. Later tonight, we'll recognize this year's hidden heroes. I hope you'll carry their names with you. They're on this call, most of them: Delaney Grafe, Sarah Glisson, Michael Adams, Roderick Morning-Trice, Nadia Cortez, and the entire team at North Carolina A&T. Their work is what this foundation actually looks like. So our charge to you tonight, this promise is unfinished, which means it is still yours to finish. Every registration table you set up, every student who registers because you asked them to, that is the promise becoming closer to reality a little more with each one. So don't wait for permission. Andy didn't, Robert Masters didn't, the students at North Carolina A&T didn't, and you don't need to either. Imagine an America within your own lifetime where every student on every campus can vote without a fight, without having to convince anyone their voice belongs in the room. Imagine a country where the promise written 250 years ago finally describes the country we actually live in, not because it was granted to us, but because a generation of young people organized and refused to accept less. That is what we're building here. So the next 250 years begins with you. And before we go even a second further, I do want to acknowledge that it was on this day, August 4th, 62 years ago, that Andrew Goodman, James Earl Chaney, and Michael Schwerner's bodies were found after a painful search. Our summit often coincides with this anniversary, and it feels really fitting to be together for it, honoring their legacy, which is the entire reason why this exact group of people is in this same Zoom room at this exact moment. The best thing we can all do on this anniversary every year is keep working toward the equitable democracy that they believed so deeply to be worth fighting for and didn't get to see.
But I don't see my picture now.
We are closer now in many ways, but we haven't truly seen it yet either. As you've seen and heard by now, our theme is Democracy, the Unfinished Promise. And we've been witness to incredible movements like Freedom Summer and the Civil Rights Movement, and also witness to the systematic dismantling of some of our most basic civil and voting rights. And this has been a perfect opportunity for us to think about what we want our communities to look like and what we have to do to get there right now. So this summit will walk us through that process. Tonight, with our ambassadors, champions, board members, staff, partner organizations, supporters, family, and friends, we'll honor their incredible work happening both in our AGF Vote Everywhere community and beyond. And we'll have a powerful panel discussion at the end of the night between a student organizer, a political scientist, a sitting representative, and a civil rights activist about where we've been, where we are, and where we need to go. Tomorrow and Thursday will be our closed sessions where our Andrew Goodman ambassadors and champions will gather for a series of trainings walking through the arc of their upcoming semester of organizing. And then on Friday, we'll all come back together for our public closing, where we'll hear from actress, activist, and producer Erika Alexander and watch the documentary John Lewis, Good Trouble, to leave us feeling empowered and moved to action. We hope you'll stay with us for as much as you can, and we'll reshare the links for the next few days at the end of tonight if you need them, so don't worry. As we move through the summit, I encourage you to take what you hear, what you like, what moves you, and share it on social media so it reaches more people. You can tag the Andrew Goodman Foundation social media accounts and use the hashtags Andrew Goodman and NCLTS 2026. Without further ado, I'm happy to kick off one of my very favorite parts of our summit every year, our Hidden Heroes Awards. As David and Sonia both mentioned, we want to honor the people who are fiercely committed to student voices and votes, even when they're not in the spotlight. Many of you have attended Hidden Heroes ceremonies before. Some of you probably even got to attend in-person ones years ago, which I'm very jealous about. For those who haven't, the Hidden Heroes Awards are one way that we at AGF recognize the incredible dedication of our ambassadors and champions. The name is self-explanatory. People who are making the world better for their neighbors, often without recognition. Our ambassadors are doing this difficult work on top of being students, working jobs, commuting, caregiving, and of course being humans and all that entails. Our champions are working at a very difficult time in higher education, many doing several jobs under the name and pay of one, and for many, civic engagement is absolutely nowhere in their job descriptions. Our ambassadors and champions have answered a call just like Andy, James, Mickey, and so many others did during Freedom Summer. And we're so inspired by the work of our campus teams and are honored to recognize our 2025-2026 Hidden Heroes. So bear with me, I'm going to speak a little bit more. Our first award is the Andrew Goodman Rising Star of the Year. This category is awarded to an Andrew Goodman ambassador who is a first or second year student and shows great promise for their future organizing. The student has already established themselves as a leader on their campus and a powerful force in breaking down barriers to their peers' engagement. I'm so happy to give this award to Nadia Cortez, our ambassador from Simpson College, for jumping into the ambassadorship this past year as a team of one and never looking back. Despite having limited capacity, Nadia quickly learned the landscape of voting rights in Iowa, took over social media campaigns, built surveys about students' media sources and voting plans, prepared to deliver presentations in all first-year classes, and built a team for the fall 2026 semester that's ready to hit the ground running. Congratulations, Nadia. I can't wait to see you lead this coming year. Everyone show love in the chat. Our next award is the Andrew Goodman HBCU Service Award. This award is given to an Andrew Goodman ambassador within AGF's HBCU cohort who shows exemplary leadership and involvement in the cohort. The student makes a significant contribution to a major project or operation on campus and special service to the university. I'm thrilled to award this to Roderick Morning-Trice, an ambassador at Dillard University, who you'll all be hearing from in about 20 minutes in our panel discussion. Roderick has been an ambassador for over 2 years and a leader at Dillard and beyond. He organized events on campus that reached 280 students in the past spring semester alone, and he's represented this work at several conferences, organizing the Gulf Coast Democracy Summit, and recently speaking at the Essence Festival of Culture's Global Black Economic Forum, proving himself to be a true leader in youth voting rights. Congratulations, Roderick. I'm so excited for everyone to hear from you shortly. Our next award is the Andrew Goodman Ambassador Honoree. This category is awarded to Andrew Goodman ambassadors who are integral pillars of leadership and service on their campus team. These awardees display a fervent enthusiasm for an inclusive democracy by expanding student voting access on their campus. They help their campus team develop innovative civic organizing strategies. And I'm proud to give this award to Delaney Grafe, a brand new student, or brand new graduate of Iowa State University, for her leadership and team spirit as an Andrew Goodman ambassador for 3 years. Delaney developed this awesome bite-sized civic series that broke down key terms and processes of civic and voter engagement into accessible graphics that could be shared with her peers. And in anticipation of her graduation this past spring, Delaney had the foresight to document her work and create video tutorials for new students who could take over her work so that her work didn't end with her tenure on campus. That is the mark of a true leader. Congratulations, Delaney. Our next award is given to is the Campus Champion of the Year award. And this is given to an Andrew Goodman campus champion who creates and supports sustainable pathways of engagement between university administration and the student body at large, which is not an easy thing to do. Nurturing the growth and development of their ambassadors, the awardee uplifts the voices of their campus team by using their resources and networks to accomplish institutional and organizational goals. They lead by example. Seen in all facets of their work, their passion for youth voter engagement is palpable. I'm really happy to award this to Dr. Michael Adams for his leadership on his campus, Texas Southern University, within the AGF network and across the country. Dr. Adams leads critical research with the Barbara Jordan Public Policy Research and Service Center, including a recent report on redistricting. He's been a strong participant in AGF's monthly HBCU cohort meetings, sharing his resources and expertise, not only with his own ambassadors, but also with the cohort and the network at large. This is extra full circle because Dr. Adams was our managing director, Christina Sanders' political science professor years ago, and taught her everything she knows about the different types of federalism. So congratulations and thank you for all you do, Dr. Adams. Our next award is for Andrew Goodman Ambassador of the Year. This award is given to an ambassador who demonstrates strong leadership and dedication to nonpartisan civic engagement. The awardee plays a key role in the creation and implementation of innovative projects that lead to significant progress in voter engagement on their campus. They display a deep dedication to social justice, diversity, and inclusion that activates and mobilizes diverse communities on their campus and beyond. It's a joy to present this award to Sarah Glisson, a brand new graduate of Ramapo College. Sarah was an ambassador for 3 years and was an incredible leader from the moment she started. Among many other things, Sarah developed a Freedom Summer exhibit for the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer, including application materials and photos from the archives and an interview with Robert Masters, who you'll hear from soon. She made sure her campus knew the legacy of Andy, James, and Mickey. Just a few months ago, Sarah received the Truman Scholarship in recognition of her work. Congratulations, Sarah. You truly left a mark on Ramapo and EGF. And now our last award is for Andrew Goodman Campus Team of the Year. This award is given to an Andrew Goodman campus team that shows exemplary synergy in the creation of their campus action plan and execution of their civic engagement goals. This team works together as an unbreakable unit to leverage their personal talents and interests towards the common goal of a representative democracy. This team has an expert ability to motivate and execute large projects as a cohesive unit. I'm very proud to give this award to our team at North Carolina A&T State University for their continued hope and advocacy in the face of relentless barriers to student voting. When the Board of Elections neglected to allocate an on-campus polling site during early voting at A&T this year, Ambassadors Xavion and Jayan launched a campaign with their peers to advocate for their on-campus polling site. They wrote an op-ed, spoke at a press conference before our Board of Elections hearing, spoke on the Native Lands podcast, and mobilized their peers. While Xavion and Jayan advocated, their champion, Tiffany Seawright, led her office in its effort to connect all A&T students with leadership and service opportunities. Congratulations, A&T. You're the dream team. Congratulations to all of our Hidden Heroes awardees. I know I speak for everyone when I say that I'm so proud and honored to work alongside you. The work you do, even when no one is watching, is helping break down barriers every single day, and we are all truly better off because of it. Now, I'm really excited to lead us into something new this year, an inaugural award to recognize someone outside of the AGF network whose advocacy and commitment to equity is creating a better world for us to organize and exist in. I'm happy to turn it over to Andy Tombach, Vice Chair of AGF's Board of Directors, to share a bit more. Take it away, Andy.
Thanks, Caroline. Despite a lot of technological efforts, I don't think my name appears below me, so I have glasses and a white button-down shirt on. I'm a member of the board. I'm greatly honored to participate in it. I've known a lot of brave people in my life. Robert Masters stands out for his bravery. He'd never tell you that himself. He's a dear friend of mine. He's the one who brought me onto the board of directors of the Andrew Goodman Foundation and gave me the opportunity to contribute to the foundation. We all owe Robert one way or another. I feel I owe him hugely. In the summer of 1964, Robert was a student at Queens College. He was a little bit younger than he looks on the screen. He heard about Freedom Summer, about going to Mississippi to register Black Americans to vote. And he signed up. He got in a car with his friend, Andrew Goodman, drove to Ohio for training, and then they went south. Andy never came home. Robert did, and he's spent every year since honoring that. That's not something a man does once and moves on from. Robert has stayed in the fight for 60 years. He's made a remarkable contribution to registering young voters and increasing the civic engagement of young people. He does it day in, day out. But if you ask him about it, and I'm a litigator, it's not easy to elicit from Robert the things that he's done, the contributions that he's made. He'll change the subject. He's a modest person. This foundation named an award after him this year because he spent 6 decades being exactly the kind of hidden hero that we're recognizing tonight. Someone who did the work and never once needed or sought credit for it. So I'll hand this next part over to Robert, a man I respect and view as a role model. Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andy. Of course, I have to say I'm embarrassed by all the nice things you said. We'll deal with that later. I have to say, having an award named after me is a strange kind of honor. When Caroline first told me about it, I wrote back that I was overwhelmed, and I meant it. 60 years later, I'm still not sure I did anything more than what needed doing. As I like to say, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? So instead of talking about myself up here, I'd rather do what this award is actually for and talk about someone who's earned it. But since Andy brought up 1964, let me tell you the part most people don't know. Before Mississippi, I was just a student at Queens College, and that's where it started for me. A group of us signed up for Freedom Summer as volunteers. Quite a few names on that list at first, then one at a time, people backed out. By the time it actually came down to going south, it was just 2 of us left, me and my friend Andrew Goodman. We drove out to Ohio together for training, not sure what the future held for us. I came home, Andy didn't. I spent 60 years living with that and trying to be worthy. I tell you that not for sympathy, but because it's exactly why I recognize what tonight's recipient has been doing with her career. This year's theme is democracy, the unfinished promise. I think about that phrase a lot. Andy died believing this country owed everyone an equal seat at the table. And 60 years later, we're still finishing that sentence. That's not abstract for me. It's the whole reason I'm standing here. And it's exactly what I see when I look at Erika Alexander's career. Erika is best known for her career on the screen, and she's had a remarkable one for over 3 decades. But that's not why she's part of this program tonight. She's here because long after the camera stopped rolling, she kept showing up for this work. She co-founded Color Farm Media, a production company built around telling socially conscious stories. Stories that put the unfinished parts of this country's promise on screen instead of looking away from them. She spent months with Congressman John Lewis, making the documentary Good Trouble, sitting with a man who had his skull fractured on a bridge in Selma, Alabama, and who in his 80s still wouldn't stop registering voters. She's on the board of Vote, Run, Lead, which trains women to run for office and actually win. She's on the board of One Fair Wage, fighting for the workers who get paid less than minimum wage and told to make up the difference in tips. She's testified before Congress and knocked on doors for candidates most people never see up close. That's the same thread that runs through this whole foundation, and it's the same thread running through Erika's work. You learn what's broken, and then you do something about it, again and again, long after anyone's watching. Erika Alexander has spent her career helping finish the promise Andy died for. So it's my great honor to present the inaugural Robert Masters Award to Erika Alexander. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erika Alexander, and I'm accepting the Robert Masters Award tonight with real gratitude. Though I'll admit, when the Andrew Goodman Foundation called, my first thought was, wait, do I know a Robert Masters? I didn't. Now I do, and I'm honored. In June of 1964, Andrew Goodman and his college friend, Robert Masters, got into a car in New York and drove to Mississippi because they believed every American deserved the right to vote. Andy never made it home. Robert did. And he spent 60 years making sure nobody forgot why they went. I'm the daughter of an itinerant preacher and an educator, and we moved around constantly, town to town, congregation to congregation. When you grow up like that, you see the parts of the promise that get kept and the parts that don't. This year's theme is democracy, the unfinished promise. America turns 250 years old, 250 years since we wrote down that all of us count equally. We are still finishing that sentence, and every ambassador and campus champion logging in from a dorm room right now, you're the ones doing the finishing, not people like me with a camera and a nice speech. You, going door to door, getting told no, coming back the next day anyway. Yeah. At the end of this summit, we're watching Good Trouble, my documentary on John Lewis. Bring tissues and snacks. Thank you for this. I'll wear it well, but you're the heroes here. All right, now go finish it.
Very powerfully said. I am so grateful for all the work our hidden heroes, Robert, Erika, and so many others have done to advocate for voting and civil rights in our country. I'm so excited to watch the film John Lewis, Good Trouble, and hear from Erika Alexander live on Friday. So remember to register for that if you haven't yet. I'm dropping the link in the chat. In the meantime, we have lots more in store for you, so let's get right into it. I'm happy to move us into our panel discussion, which will be moderated by AGF's Managing Director, Christina Sanders, and we'll play a quick video to set the scene, and then Christina will take it away.
Greetings. My name is Frank D. Jackson. I hail from the big city of Luling, Texas. I attended Prairie View A&M University in 1969, graduated in 1973 with a commission in the United States Navy. My time at Prairie View kind of really defined my political aspirations. Didn't come here to get involved in politics, but it just kind of happened that way. I was able to, in 1972, try to vote as a student, and we were blocked because we were not considered residents of Waller County. Only one student was enabled to register, and that was a young student named Charles Ballas. Ballas was able to vote, and so he came back and told the rest of us, and our Student Government Association managed a campaign to get all the students to vote. That campaign ended up in a lawsuit, which went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled that Prairie View students had the right to choose their residency. So that kind of set the stage for students all across the country, in my opinion, that they could choose where they wanted to vote. So it made a difference in college towns especially. So we have a seat at the table, and that made the difference. So I want to encourage all those that are listening to get involved, not only in the voting, but that's just a small part. The other part is building your community, building a larger community, because you get to know your history of the people and the place that you reside in, and that makes a difference. And I think that's a legacy that I would like to pass on to those coming after us, that we got to stay engaged in this process, because democracy is very fragile and it could be torn asunder at the smallest provocation from somebody from the outside. And we know that that can happen. So I would encourage all those that are listening to get involved in the voting process, just like the kids did that Freedom Summer when they came down south, got people registered to vote, and they gave their lives for that cause. That meant a lot. And we got to keep sacrificing whatever it takes to keep this democracy alive. Thank you.
Thank you to Mayor Jackson, former Mayor Jackson, who was also the Vice President of External Affairs at Prairie View for a very long time. One of the students, it's incredible that he was one of the students that actually established the case that not only allow for students to be able to vote where they go to school and live, but also for the military and folks who serve in our armed services. And so we thank him for his service and for his welcome. My name is Christina Sanders, and I am very excited to be here at this 10th anniversary of the National Civic Leadership Conference Summit for Andrew Goodman Foundation. And I think the panel is something that you all were looking forward to. Oh, let me say congratulations to every one of the hidden heroes. And, for the work that you're doing, it's incredibly important. And I'm sure that however you feel, how insignificant it may feel to you, it's very significant, just like what Robert Masters shared about the work that we do in real time. It's stuff that can make a difference over time. And I think that making the effort to do the work on the right side of history and to do it in a way that helps others, and in this case, to move our democracy forward and be a part of the promise, it makes a big deal. So the journey of 1,000 steps is just one single school day voter registration at a time. So thank you for being here. And to our panelists, I know we're waiting for Representative Daniels. He should be on, but we'll get started with the panelists that we do have here. I'll go ahead and read the bios for all of them just to introduce them. One of our former champions and political science professor and researcher, Dr. Richard Fording, is a John Doerr Elmore Endowed Professor of Political Science at the University of Alabama. He earned his BA at the University of Florida and his PhD from Florida State University. His primary teaching and research interests include public policy, race and politics, state politics, social movements, quantitative methodology, and he's the author or co-author of articles appearing in various journals, including the American Political Science Review, American Sociological Review, the American Journal of Political Science, and the Journal of Politics. He is the co-author of Disciplining the Poor, Neoliberal Paternalism, and the Persistent Power of Race, which I have not read, but it sounds extremely interesting. Thank you for being here, Dr. Fording. And we have also one of our ambassadors from Dillard University, Roderick Morning-Trice. He's class of 2027. He's a political science major, and he hails from the great city and state of Birmingham, Alabama. And I'll say we did not intentionally have everybody from Alabama on the panel. That's just, it's Alabama's day. So welcome, Alabama. And he's anxious to solve some of the world's problems and excited about connecting tonight. And in his free time, he enjoys socializing with his friends, meeting new people, and diving deeper into his passions of music and social justice. Miss Bernice Sims, she's going to join us with audio. She is the author of The Detour Before Midnight, and she talks about her life and growing up in the Jim Crow South and the events that that got her to join the Freedom Summer movement. She joined the NAACP as a young person, spent many hours in the home of Medgar Evers before he was assassinated, and she was a resident of Long Island and since 1972, and she was the first African-American female trustee of the Hempstead Village Council in New York, and she's also served as an advisor to the to Mario Cuomo, the former governor of New York, and Representative Daniels, who's on the way. He is the minority House leader for House District 53. He's in his third term at the Alabama House of Representatives in Huntsville. Since his election in 2014, he has fought to increase support for public schools, early childhood education, rebuild Alabama's workforce, and ensure access to healthcare for all Alabamians, and to grow businesses, technology, and services in rural areas. He is the minority. Hi, there he is. He's here. He has served as the minority leader since 2017 and the youngest African American to hold the position under his leadership. The House Democrats have successfully fought for and passed successful measures. So these are our panelists. We're going to jump right into it with the question that's going to go to everyone. The first question will go to everyone, and then I will jump into a question directly to you, Bernice. Bernice, can you hear me? Let me check real fast. Bernice, can you hear us? We'll jump right into Roderick. So the first question, it'll go to everyone, and then we'll come to you, Roderick. Our theme this year is democracy unfinished, the unfinished promise, very much so. What does this mean to you? And what does it mean to you in the work that you're doing as an ambassador? Go ahead, Roderick.
Okay, so the theme phrase to me underscores the notion that we're still on the journey, right? We know that we haven't gotten it all figured out, but we recognize it's an active exercise to form a more perfect union and democracy. So that's the biggest thing that comes to mind with that theme.
Okay, yeah, it is. And Dr. Fording?
I'm sorry, you want me to answer which question?
The opening question, the
Oh,
theme.
yeah.
What does that phrase actually mean to you in the work that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me first, and brings back a lot of great memories I have working with the Andrew Goodman Foundation and our Vote Everywhere students on our campus. So I thought about this a good bit. It's very relevant to a class I teach on the politics of voting rights. And so this is how I think of, the unfinished promise, I guess, and its relationship to the state of our democracy. So we're never going to have 100% turnout. No country, ever does. So what I tell my students is the real test of a democracy isn't whether everyone votes, it's whether the people who do vote look like the people who don't. In other words, are voters representative of the citizens? If they are, elections are legitimate and democratic. If they aren't, then some people's interests aren't getting counted and our elections fall short of our democratic standards. So by that standard, of course, the United States has never been a fully realized democracy, not once, not on any day in our history. But we've gotten closer over time in sort of fits and starts, no, and never quietly. At the founding, the vote belonged to property-owning white men. Property requirements fell in 1820s and 30s. The 15th Amendment was passed in 1870. The 19th Amendment in 1920. Native Americans gained the right to vote in 1924. The Voting Rights Act passed in 1965. Um, and 18-year-olds, of course, in 1972. At voters with disabilities in 1984. So the trajectory has been toward expanding the electorate. However, that work is still unfinished, and I think this is what uh, you know what the unfinished promise means to me, and that is trying to bring other groups into the electorate so that we have a more representative electorate. And two groups, I think, remain badly underrepresented at the ballot box. The first, of course, is young people, perhaps more than any other demographic group in this country. In 2024, about 47% of Americans aged 18 to 29 voted. The overall turnout was 64%. In Alabama's last midterm, youth turnout was around 15%. And so I don't think, this is due to apathy. Uh, Measured as a share of registered voters, American turnout is among the highest in the world. But measured as a share of eligible adults, we rank, you know, in sort of the second, below the median.
Yeah.
And so the gap between those two numbers is registration. And so I think, registration, filling out that form, the process you have to go through, that burden falls hardest on people who recently moved. And of course, that burden falls on students. The other group is people with criminal convictions. I'll maybe talk a little bit more about that and the impact of felony disenfranchisement laws, which is something that I spend a lot of time working on now. A lot of that work with students, including some of our Vote Everywhere students as well. But I guess I would just close by saying, in terms of again, sort of the unfinished promise. For most of my career, the trajectory I felt was still bending, toward inclusion. I hate to say it, but I don't feel like I don't feel that way right now. The Louisiana v. Calais decision that I think, most of us are familiar with in this audience resulted in the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, at least
And,
what.
we'll go, let's go, we're going to go into that too. If we
Okay,
can,
was left of it.
briefly.
And so I think there's a lot of unfinished
Mhm.
business left, and that's just, because we're backsliding and we
Yeah.
have a lot to do to actually just get us back to where we were just a few years ago.
Yeah. And I think, I think that is going to be a recurring theme for us in terms of, realizing that there's as the saying goes, it's democracy is something that you have to work towards it's every day these days, honestly. It wasn't like that 10 years ago and 15 years ago, but it's definitely every day and sometimes every hour these days. And you're exactly right that the the way that things are going backwards, there was progress, but the way that things are going backwards, it is a requirement for us, the people who would like to see the nation move towards a fairer and freer society for all, to be the hands of democracy. So I appreciate those points, because those are real points that are, while they're recurring in terms of happening at other periods of time during history, there's something that we are having to face together in this moment. Doesn't seem like a fun opportunity, but definitely I'm sure there's an opportunity somewhere in the difficulty that we collectively have been presented. And I think we have Bernice on the line. Are you there, Bernice?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you. Thank you so much
Okay.
for joining us. And so what we're going over right now is we're just opening up the conversation, the theme democracy, the unfinished promise, what does that mean to you when you hear
To
it
me.
and the work that you've done or the life that you live?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the hidden heroes and the awards recipients, and thank you for having me. When I think of the democracy, the unfinished business, unfinished promise, as someone recalled, today it's quite a it's a quite a difficult time for me every year this time, because as we mentioned, 62 years ago, August the 4th, Michael Swerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney, my co-workers and neighbors, people that I worked with through the NAACP as a youth and COFOR, they allowed me to be a part of them because I was with the NAACP. They inducted me. They said I was a part of all of those various organizations. And I got started very early in voter registration. And one of the things that I grew up with, being in the segregated South, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the technology of today, but the thing that was most important to us was the fact that we knew that we had a democracy, and we had a government that was, had checks and balances. It was three forms of government. Just knowing about the three forms of government that we had, and made me reflect again on, we hearing a lot about losing our democracy. And I thought about revisiting what that means, that it is a system of government where the powers belong to the people, and the elected officials make the laws and manage manage the countries. And it's our promise through our Constitution. And the citizens are the one that elect the leaders. And I go back to that because that was my early civic involvement. And I felt so proud to be patriotic and know that I lived in a country that, had all of these rights that I somehow felt as though even in the segregated South, that they were talking about me, rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then I had to reflect upon something that Dr. Martin Luther King said back on August 28, 1963, at the Lincoln Memorial. And he reminded us of the unfinished promise. And he said that, that he reminded us that in America signed a promissory note regarding the unfulfilled promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all citizens. And somehow we defaulted. He stated that America had defaulted on that promissory note because so many people, many of us, today hold that bad check, marked by discrimination and unequal justice. And Dr. King had said that he refused to believe that the Bank of Justice was bankrupt. And he demanded that the nation cash the check to grant freedom and justice for all. And it seems like, as the previous speaker spoke, we're back at that same point again in life. It seems like a revolving door. But one of the things that we have to remember is that each generation has to have that resilience to continue the struggle, because it's not really one. This is a process. This thing called democracy, it had very lofty ideas, the Declaration of Independence, the right of that. We were fighting for our freedom from our motherland. And we have to remember that it's always a process. And when we get down and low and thinking that we're reverting back, we're trying to get to 10, and we see ourselves moving towards one 1 through 8, and then somehow we get to 8 and we backtrack back to 5 or even 3. It can be very disheartening, and it can cause us to lose our focus. But we must remember always that it is a process. It is an unfinished, it's an unfinished promise, and it will always be a process, and we have to have those resilient. We have to remember those people that were so resilient and lost their lives, lost blood. John Lewis lost blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and I lost 3 of my dear friends on June 21st, 1964. And we're operating on the back of that kind of resilience, and we have to continue. It is an unfinished promise, but we have to continue.
That's wonderful, and I appreciate what you were sharing about the fact that things are different. And there was a comment, Dr. Adams, who won the award, literally taught me everything, nearly everything that I know about federalism and the different types of federalism. And I have a really good memory of it. And when I think about what's happening now and what we're facing with the elections and not having some of those checks and balances, some of those triggers that were strategically put into the Constitution to be able to protect people, but also the ones that evolve, that we're putting there to allow us to evolve to different spaces in terms of the new laws, the new policies, and folding new people into the process. So it was only white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male landowners when the Constitution was signed, but over time, that whole quote, more perfect, definitely didn't mean perfection. It meant over time folding people in. I'm sure the framers couldn't even imagine that we would be here on a Zoom. What is a Zoom? Together, us here like this, talking about voting rights, and they couldn't have imagined it. But in their time and in their day, they were mindful of the same thing you just shared, Bernice, that there has to be first of all, the people have to be involved, and they have to continue to have the willpower to push back and move forward. But also, there has to be something in the institution that's helping to support and protect that. And before we move forward, you came back in at the perfect time, Representative Daniels. We're doing the opening question about what the theme this year, democracy, the unfinished promise. Like what does that mean to you in your work, and not just your work in the legislature in Alabama, but in your life's work, some of the work you've done even before being an elected official in Alabama?
I'm sorry about that. I've been going through some back roads, and it's been tough. And so your question is, what does democracy means to me in my work as a legislator?
Well, what is the theme? Democracy, the unfinished promise. Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, it really means a lot, especially being here in Alabama, um, where we roll back all the advances that have been made since the 60s, the incremental progress that have been made. We've just turned back the hands of time uh, with the stroke of an ink pen and the push of legislation, whether it's the anti-DEI legislation, whether it's other pieces of legislation that impacts voting rights, whether it's redistricting. We've gone through that process, and there are rumors that we'll go back through that process again, immediately following the election, of trying to take away the representation of communities that have fought so hard and worked so hard to be able to have representation that look like them and that understands them. Then there are other pieces of legislation that has been introduced that directly and indirectly impact communities that I represent, whether it's the African American community or whether it's impoverished non-African American communities throughout the district and throughout the state of Alabama. And so for me, it is really troublesome when I feel like my children are on the brink of having less rights than I have, and less rights than my grandparents and ancestors had. And so it really tells me that we've not moved as far as we claim to have moved as a society. And then when you look at things like the racial polarization studies that have been done when we were in the effort to make the case for having more representation of a state that's about 30% African American, that only had one member of Congress that was African American, and now we have two. And so being able to see those things, and individuals become numb and ignorant to the fact that that our community deserves to have representation as well. And so for me, it's not where I think we should be, and we have a lot of work to do, and we have to be more strategic about our work. But we'll continue to fight the good fight. We'll be armed with more research and more strategy to try to fight back on some of this, because we are ground zero here in Alabama, and many of the pieces of legislation that is indirectly or directly impacting communities of color start out here in the state of Alabama, and so it's not where we want it to be, but we're going to continue to fight hard to get it back to where my children and my grandchildren will be able to live have more rights than me. But right now they're on the brink of not having more rights than I do.
Wow, that's a very interesting take. And I think that thank you for that. I think that takes us to let's take the temperature on what's happening on our campuses with our students. And we know that in, Sonia's remarks, thank you, Caroline, for sharing those. The conversations about what's happening in North Carolina. We know that students in Indiana are having challenges. We know that students in other places around the country, their rights are being challenged just in terms of voting. But also we know that there are many laws and pieces of legislation that's coming out in these legislatures that's not just impacting everyday citizens in every community, but it's also impacting students and their ability to represent themselves with picking their own representative. And historically, it's been a challenge, but now we see where legislation is going further in terms of infringing on their First Amendment rights, their ability to learn and study about different cultures on campus, to be able to learn about women's rights in some cases. And even with their professors, there's so many challenges on campuses that come from not having a person that can represent you and to cast the vote on your behalf at the local, state, and federal level in your interest. But the voting rights are also a part of that. And so, Roderick, can you tell us about some of your experience in Louisiana? New Orleans has a long history of students and SNCC fighting for voting rights and for equality and just for basic rights for communities there. Tell us about some of the challenges that you faced and some of the advice you would give to other students who may face challenges that we've not yet seen upcoming in this midterm.
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges that I would say that we face now on college campuses, even starting out in my freshman year, which is my fourth year at Dillard now, there's so many students and young people who are apathetic concerning voting. And I think that stems from there being a lack of, I guess you could say, empathy, but a lot of students don't realize the cost that was paid or in the effort and the fight for the rights that we are afforded, were afforded at least, up until recently in regards to voting. When people don't really internalize the suffering or the suffrage, I guess you could say, surrounding what it took to even get us to this point, I think that it allows a disillusionment that we cannot afford, and how people just kind of, I'm not going to say people, but young people distance themselves from voting. And I think there's so many factors to that, but I'll never forget a conversation that we had, or that I had with a student. And I was a freshman at the time, probably second semester, and we were doing a voter registration drive, one of the first that I'd ever done. And a student came up and just mentioned, well, why should I vote? Like, my vote doesn't really matter, and this senior, by the way, was kind of dead set on the fact that it wasn't a big thing. It was not nothing was going to change regardless of whether he participated or not. And so that kind of defeated me. especially being young and being, fresh to the college campus. And ever since then, I have sought and searched for what can we offer to a student who has that mindset and doesn't really, appreciate the work that went into where we are today. And so what I came to realize was that we have to make things matter to people. And so a lot of times also, things that allow you to be shielded or have this bubble of protection from certain ideas is that it doesn't affect you or you don't feel the effects or the dots or the lines are not connected. And so one of the things that we focused on doing since then was making things matter to young college students. So now we're seeing some of that legislation that's affecting, federal financial aid and eligibility to, continue and pursue the education that we do hold dear. And so that has really caused us to, be able to lean into that because that's a direct impact, that's a direct implication. But it's been, figuring out what are those things, what are those triggers for young people that will make voting matter, make elections matter, and make civic engagement matter in a way that mobilizes, right? Because part of the work is getting people registered. We register, so many times through so many drives throughout the year. But if those people don't make it to the ballot box, their registration is in vain a little bit. And so now, as we're seeing the effects and costs, unfortunately, now it's hindsight because the elections and things have already happened. The bills are being passed that are affecting us. And so now we just use this as a teaching moment, also because we're young and this is most of us, this is our first presidential election, most recently, and some of the first elections that we're participating in. And so we're just carrying forward with us, that notion of, hey, it does matter. There's been this saying going around, or you're the birthday because of some kind of famous song lyrics or whatever. And it's just like, people saying they don't do politics. Well, you don't do politics, you're not the birthday, the politics are gonna do you. So that is what I offer, and that's kind of what it's looked like on the college campus.
Yeah, well, I mean, you are, I don't know if you're the birthday or not, but you are, you all are students. And I think you said what you're, and it's interesting that it's a lot of I wouldn't say pressure because y'all are kind of grown students, but it is something new where you're learning. There's a big gap in terms of like the civic engagement and education and knowledge to that point. So there's now a lot of young people are being thrown into it. And that's really important because that's one of the reasons why the work that AGF does is incredibly essential and having chapters around the country that don't leave campuses because it allows for the institutionalization and like the support that is consistent, the knowledge base for the young people, but also having a campus champion. And I think Dr. Fording, you were I worked directly with Dr. Fording. He was one of my favorite champions. I love them all. But just the wealth of like passion and commitment that you all gave or give to the students, it is invaluable. And one of the things that they don't see is some of the larger things happening. You mentioned Calye a little bit, and I'd love for you to just go into that or something similar in terms of helping to explain why it is so important that the champions and the student ambassadors and universities be continuously involved in this work because what ways does it impact them as students, as a university, as well as in terms of the stuff that they don't see, the blind sides that might happen as they're coming to school or not there yet.
So yeah, I can talk a little bit about why I think um, our Vote Everywhere chapters, our student ambassadors are so important and on the campuses where they are, and also why I think the campus champions are important. Um, After the 2024 election, so I know many of the ambassadors are familiar with the work from Tufts University at Circle, the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement. Uh, they, as part of their the surveys that they do, they ask young people whether anyone, meaning like any campaign, any organization, anyone, had contacted them about voting, and 37% said that no one had. This is among, again, young people and total. But then among those who didn't vote, it was 59%. So about a third overall had no one contact them, but about 60% of the non-voters didn't have anyone contact them. And so I think, what we can take away from that partly is that when we think about why it is that young people don't vote, part of the reason I think is that, at least among the ones who stayed home, they were never asked to vote. And so this is what the Vote Everywhere ambassadors can do, and really only them. And the literature in political science suggests that face-to-face, appeals and canvassing is the most effective way to get people out to vote, compared to other forms of communication like email or robocalls or mailers. What really moves a person is another person they recognize standing in front of them. And again, that's something that the ambassadors are, perfectly situated to be doing. That's what they do. And, and it's not just about the next election. It's even more important than that, because the research has also found that voting is habit forming. And so, for example, one study found that voting in one election raises your probability of voting in the next election by 10 to 12 percentage points. And those effects persist for 2 decades, and at least. So, the work that the ambassadors do, on the campus, appealing to students, visiting classrooms, if you're able to participate in, student orientations, it really does pay off. And just quickly regarding the champions, the faculty and staff, of course, what we know is that students are only with us for a short period of time, and it seems like before you know it, they're gone. And so to maintain that institutional memory on the campus, I mean, you can only do that by having sort of the permanence of the champion. And of course, the champions can be very helpful in helping the students navigate the campus administration to get things like campus polling places, or getting the registration into the orientation process. So anyhow, I think that works, extremely important. And we're coming up on, I think one of the most important midterm elections in my lifetime, and we need young people out there voting.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. And I think students, young people as students that are just getting to campus, learning about the process, and then being able to get into a space where there is some wisdom, there is some knowledge to help guide them to get started or to learn quickly without having to go through so much bureaucracy to start supporting their peers. I think it's strong. And I think there's a bigger space when we look at the cities and the localities where students are. There's this big argument that students, they mess up the local stuff. They get in the way of the locals. Well, we had an opportunity this past semester to do some research with the Trotter Institute at Harvard, and we did a study on the North Carolina A&T students and students in their contribution to the state of North Carolina in general. And what the research found, it was incredible that students pump billions of dollars into one county, a rural county alone, potentially. North Carolina A&T, I think it's $3 billion. And that's from the staff, that's from the taxes that they pay, the allocations from the state, the federal allocations. That means that's schools, that's roads, that's things that the students will never make use of or be a part of, but it supports the local places. It doesn't mean they should be able to take over, but it also means that the universities are, in fact, part of that community, and students are taxpayers, even if they just go buy a hamburger. they're going to be paying taxes. And in many of these states, it's regressive. So that's really the most of the taxes that are paying the bills of the states. Mr. Representative, I want to go to you and ask a question about students as taxpayers. And I mean, speak to what the young people contribute to the state of Alabama just by being in some of these cities and these places. Anthony, Daniels.
Absolutely. And so for me, we've struggled with having conversations early on with students that are on campuses and helping them understand that they are part of the community now, especially students that are from states that they feel that their vote will matter, be a lot stronger based upon the recommendation from their parents. So if they're from the Virginia, or they're from the Illinois and other places, many of them feel that their votes are a lot more important in their home states as it is than the state of Alabama. And so we began to have these conversations and really tying things that happen in the local community and how the university is impacted, how the state legislature impacts the university, how the community in general, whether it's the county commission or the mayor's office, impact some of the things that go on our college campuses. And so being able to tie the things that the things that impact them every day to the need for them to be able to register to vote or to get engaged in the process in the local community has really caught on. And so some of those individuals are now deciding to engage more on college campuses in the communities that they're going to school. You know, you'll be here for the next 4 years or 5 years, and so we've explained that to them, and so we've been able to kind of turn the corner based on those particular conversations. But it took some time to get to that point and really tying it to them, tying it to the impact that's happening locally. And so, you know, right now I think we're in a good place. I think that the even better place is that we're running a project that's called Project 619, where we're explaining to individual college, especially college students and young people in general, that are considered infrequent voters. In the state of Alabama, there are 619,000 African Americans that are considered infrequent. Many of them are under the age of 30, and so. And then for those with a higher than 50% ideology score, there are 252,000 non-African Americans that have a higher than 50% ideology score that also are considered infrequent. And then there's another 106,000 African Americans that are on the inactive voter list. And so explain to them that the last election in 2020 for the U.S. Senate in the state of Alabama was decided by less than 460,000 votes. And right there, together with the 252 and the 619 plus the 106, you have 900 something thousand people. And so making it real to them that their vote can matter in the local community and the impact that the legislature has on funding to the university. Also, it has an indirect impact onto whether tuition is raised based upon the allocation to their institution, how the laws that are on the books within the state impacts them, how local government impacts them, and so helping them understand how politics directly impact them has been what has really turned the corner, and the light has come on for some of the young people within the state of Alabama, and we're engaging them in the movement. And so we're having a multi-generational movement that we're pushing right now in the state, and that where young people are leading a lot of these efforts. And so that's has been tremendous, and I think that's going to change democracy in the long term.
Yeah, that's good. It's always been young people who have been at the forefront of changing it. And you're right, the allocations from the state impact not just the students' ability to be able to know how much tuition or how much more tuition they may have to pay, or who gets to get supported with the tuition and fees from the state allocations, but also the university programming as well as the university itself. the impacts. And I'm going to take it back to Dr. Fording on this one, because I think that it's really important that, and thank you for sharing that, Roderick and our ambassadors are doing their part of, making it clear about why they should care. And Representative Daniels just talked about just young people in general as like kind of a young cohort, because that does matter, that they're peers and share a lot of ideas, even if they live or go back to different places. That does matter, that there's efforts to be able to engage that demographic into the process by talking about issues that impact their future. But Dr. Fording, why should anybody else care? Why should anybody else care? It's Alabama. If you're in California, you're on the beach, near the beach. If you're, in Texas somewhere, you just focus on being hot. It's hot outside. Or you're up north in New York, it's raining. Why should anybody care if you're not a student, if you're not even a parent? Why does any of this about student voting rights, even in Alabama, matter to the entire country?
Sure. First, I wanted to say it's an honor to be on this panel with Representative Daniels and our other panelists as well. But I follow Representative Daniels a lot in Alabama politics. And I just want to say I speak for a lot of people who really appreciate the voice that you give us, and we don't have as many victories as we like, or I'm sure you would like, but it's so important that we feel like we have legislators who are fighting on our behalf. So thank you. Um, okay, so why should we care? Well, um, I think we should care because so the question is, why should we care about student voting rights?
Yeah, I mean, and it's somewhat sarcastic, but the people who say like it's Alabama or it's Texas or it's young people, it's university, college students. Like why like people who don't even focus on how it's impacting them, why should they care? How is it impacting folks who have kind of turned a blind ear to student access?
Well, I think we have in this country one of the largest age-related turnout gaps in the world among all other democracies. And I think um, it's no coincidence that we see public policy skewed in the direction of the groups that vote. And for example, one example I like to use is that if we look at federal government spending, that's the best statement of government's priorities. Look at the budget. About close to 40% of the federal budget goes to Social Security and Medicare, two programs for old people, elderly people. Well, what do we know about elderly people? They vote at a very high rate. How much of the budget goes toward children? Children don't vote. It's about 8%. So, uh, I think we all agree that children are a priority, but when push comes to shove in politics, who votes, I think matters a lot, and it affects the policy priorities that we all experience. And I think young or old, we should care about that. Um, I am encouraged by, the trajectory over the last, 10, 15 years, I'd say, regarding, student involvement and student turnout. Maybe I'll talk more about that in one of the other questions you have. But uh, it is something, if we don't have a democracy for one group or one person, we don't have a democracy for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you're saying in terms of like it makes a lot of sense in terms of like we have many issues and things that we collectively, I mean, I come from the school that there is enough. It's just a matter of, like you said, the priorities and who's setting those priorities. And then also there's the question of if those priorities are being set in a way that it is free and fair. And it's not just that people don't vote, it's that the process is made so complicated that it makes it more difficult, and that some of the rules that have been worked on for so long to help make it easier for folks to vote have been challenged or may not have the protections that we have seen in the years past. And this will be the first election that of many of our lifetimes that we see without protections of the Voting Rights Act, and without potentially having the monitors in elections that will come from any administration. It wasn't a partisan thing for that when it was time to look at elections and monitor them. But it's very different. And I want to go to Bernice, because this is something that you lifted about your concerns. And I would love for you to expound on what parts of, what might be challenging this election that keeps you up at night. Like, what parts of this in terms of access, and what on election day and during early voting should we be thinking about and preparing for, or what are your thoughts on what you're seeing? I think we'll have to.
Yeah. I think that we all have been, especially in the past year and a half, very concerned about staying up. Well, I think we've all had some sleepless nights, concerned about what's coming up, especially with the upcoming November election. When you ask me this question, think about it, I said, well, the first thing that keeps me up, I thought about, is our partisan Supreme Court. That's one thing that worries me, because, at the time I was coming up, at least the Supreme Court had a semblance of fairness, and it seemed to be quite different now. I never wanted to think of it as a partisan system of our government. And in terms of the midterms, I think about the obstacles and the hurdles that might be put into place, and how resilient the citizens who are confronted to go to vote. What are the, how they might handle the obstacles, because there are many kind of, when before we dealt with various kinds of intimidation processes. We had I come from the time that we had the high-powered hose, bull corners, dogs, and the billy clubs and the billy sticks and things of that nature. And of course, in 2012 with Shelby versus Holder, the preclearance at Part 4 of the voting that was taken out of place, it was diluted. So I wonder about what future laws, if given the opportunity, would be put in place to permanently have legislation that doesn't have a shelf life. I'm immediately thinking about the Civil Rights Bill in 1964 that was passed. And, I didn't realize at the time that it was only for 25 years and it had a shelf life. And those are kind of things that keep me up at night. And I wonder about the fact that if we are able to elect the kind of officials that make things permanent, that would provide those have those permanent stopgaps. Things should not have, voting rights should not have a shelf life. A person's ability to vote, that's one of the most powerful tools that we have, nonviolent. And how are those legislators, if given the opportunity, how are they going to maneuver around those kinds of issues that we've had to deal with in the past? I'd like to see something more permanently done. And that's something that bothers me. And the other thing is how we were kids. We dealt with the billy clubs and the high powered um, uh, water hose and the dogs and things of that nature. And how many people suffered. And we've talked about John Lewis. All of the blood he lost on the Edmund Pettit's Bridge, and we lost friends, and many friends have lost their lives. I wonder, and I'm hearing about, students not, this apathy about even voting and not realizing the past, the suffering and the legs that they're standing on, the shoulders that they're standing on. I wonder about, the resilience. Those are the kind of thing that bothers me. And the other issue is, education. Many people don't understand really, as I've spoken to even older people, they don't really understand what it's like to lose a democracy. Sometimes they don't really have an understanding of that. What are the choices? The choices of if you don't have a democracy, you have a dictatorship. And what is that? Do they really fully understand that? And I agree with the other speaker before that says, sometimes you have to make things in such a way that it directly shows, well, with of course, some of the people that are resistant to vote, you have to show the direct connections of how it affects them. And just one other piece, I was just looking at the news the other day, and I noticed how, speaking of students having the right to vote on campus, I just realized that in North Carolina, they have when students were able to just go across the street from one building to the other to vote on campus, they've taken that right away. I think it's still been litigated at this time. It's in Greensboro. They were able to just go across the street and, to another building and vote. And now they have to, worry about getting in cars. Some of them might not have transportation, students, and how getting to the polling places. So those are kind of things that concerns me. Those are the kind of things that keep me awake at night. Yes, and it's very real. What do we do? How do we manage how do we stay strong in light of the possibilities of kind of obstacles that would be put in place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the group, the Hidden Heroes group, our team. They should be on the line. Who have the North Carolina A&T students have been on the ground, and it has been 1964-ish when dealing with the county and state individuals. And while I smile, it's not funny at all. It's very difficult to see adults to respond the way that they're responding to citizens, constituents. And I think sometimes, like you said, Bernice, that a lot of people don't know the alternatives. We don't know the alternative, but just a little bit of knowledge and information about how some things work. It's a reality check that some people um, might not want to ever have to experience in this lifetime. We get the most. I'm from Houston, and there was a snowstorm. The whole city was just shut down for like it was. You could nobody could do anything. You couldn't pay your way to another place. You couldn't skate or ski. You couldn't do anything. We didn't have skates or skis. And it's not necessarily climate, which is something that's a whole nother subject, is why we got to keep the governance together. But it's a situation where I think some of the people who are making these decisions themselves don't truly deeply understand the ramifications of destabilizing what it looks like to destabilize local, state, national economies as well as communities. Um, and and I think in terms of what we can lean on is that we know that we're here on this call, that the will still exists, and it is a burning fire. It is a raging fire. And our students are still passionate and committed to this. And I want to go to Roderick and I want to ask, like, why, after what you know, little or a lot, about what's going on and what you've seen, like, why are you doing this work? Like, you could be doing so many other things on campus. Like, why do you focus on civic engagement? And let me say this, I've been to several events in New Orleans for voting rights and for community events. Every time I go, when I walk into those events, I see Roderick, and that is very impressive. So we're so lucky to have you as an ambassador, but why? Why are you doing this? And like, why are you focusing on civic engagement?
That's a great question. And it draws me back to a statement I made earlier about, the cost that was paid. And so I recognize the cost. Being from Birmingham, growing up there, I don't know how intentional it was on my parents' part, but I was never far removed from hearing the stories of the horrid things that happen to people on this journey for freedom, voting rights, all of those things. And so I can remember ever as far as back as I can remember of reading in general, I would always read there was a series of books and it was called like I Am. And so the first one that I ever read was I Am Martin Luther King, right? And so they had all of these heroes who were a part of this series. And as I read more of those stories and gathered the historical context to where we are or where we were at the time, there was a passion ignited that I could not ignore. And I felt like the only way to repay some of that cost to so many people that came before us was to continue that work and continue the fight of civic engagement. And so it would not let me, I would not be able to rest well at night if I did not do everything that I could in my power to advance our democracy and civic engagement, but also to build upon the work that was laid by so many that came before us. And I feel as though in my life in general, outside of civic engagement, outside of the things or the work that I'm passionate about, what I always take or what I'm most grateful for is what has been done for others to allow me to be in the spaces and positions that I'm in. And because of that, it continually draws me into this work. And so my mission and goal now is just to ensure that that's something that I pass on to the next person. There are so many people who have been, I'm not going to say oblivious. And honestly, in this time, our complacency is being taken advantage of. And so we have to adjust in the same ways that our counterparts are. And so we have to realize that then they were working to get to a foundation. We live in a time where the foundation has been set, and we are almost seeing a rollback of some of the foundational rights and freedoms, liberties that we have had. And so because of that, it should, and where it doesn't, that's where we play our part as ambassadors. It should ignite a fire amongst young people and especially young voters, to ensure that we are actually actively working towards that goal. And I say that because um, we honestly we truly have gotten away from the understanding that you know a lot of these changes and a lot of the work that was done, it was not that long ago. Like a lot of these people are still living. And so because of that, we realize we came far, we've been pushed back, but now we have to push even further forward.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that you're right. It's just the what we have to continue to do. And it is, hopefully it's like one of the waves that go quickly and everybody can get on board and we can move to the right side of history. And that's where we were trying to go anyway. But we still face a lot of stuff today. And Dr. Fording, I want to switch to you as a researcher. Like, what are some things, some voting rights things today. Like, what does it look like in terms of the numbers? What should people be paying attention to? I know what we see on the news, and that could be part of it, but what should we really be paying attention to right now?
Well, of course, I think the case out of Louisiana, the Calais decision, is the one that I think has everyone in the voting rights community, you know, on, red alert. And uh, yeah, I mean, there was a time when, well, I'll go back to Alabama. Um, in 1901, there was a constitutional convention, and the leader who convened the convention, or John Knox, stated explicitly that the purpose of the convention, and specifically the suffrage provisions that were added, many of them, of course, been struck down over the years. The restrictive Jim Crow laws was to, reestablish white supremacy. He actually said that out loud. But if you look at the actual text of, that article, that part of the Constitution, the state Constitution, it did not actually ever mention race or, of an individual. So on its face, it was not, explicit. And fast forward now to, the result of this Supreme Court decision. I mean, no one is going to be explicit now and say what if there's, a racially discriminatory motivation. Yet laws are going to still stand that now, and new laws are certainly going to be implemented that certainly have a racially discriminatory impact. And there's nothing, there's very little now that we can do about it, at least because we don't have the protection of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So I think this just places all, more emphasis on finding, new voters, building coalitions, and some of those new voters are going to be young people, need to be young people. There are like 8.5 million new potentially first-time voters out there, young people ready to be, mobilized. In my state, there are somewhere between 200 and 300,000 people, it's estimated, who can't vote because of a criminal conviction. There are probably just as many who think they can't vote because of criminal conviction, but they actually can because our law is so confusing. 1 million people in the state of Florida alone are disenfranchised because of their felony disenfranchisement law. So obviously that takes, legislation, new laws passed to enfranchise those people. But I think, we need to be growing, expanding the electorate to be able to overcome the fact that we don't have the voting rights anymore. We're going to have to the policy victories, are going to have to come despite what is now, a less democratic system, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna thank you. I think in the franchise, the felon enfranchisement and even the ex-felon enfranchisement part is something that more folks should pay attention to, I believe. When the stereotypes or the typical things that cause us to ignore some of the conversations, like the labels, when really the understory is one that is much deeper than and it really goes back to voting, making sure certain people don't create an environment where everyone is represented or representatives look like everyone in some cases. And I commend you for that work too. That's really important and powerful work that is on the bleeding edge still, unfortunately, on the bleeding edge of a conversation that delivers a part of the promise of democracy for everyone, or even just representatives for everyone. And I think we'll go into, and I have a few more questions, and then we'll go into our closing question and our closing round. I want to go to the representative And I want to just really place a hard question on your lap and just see what we know that, if universities that the students voting helped, them, people in the community, as well as their universities, when it comes to laws and public policy. What are representatives? Like, what can y'all do with this? Like, what are y'all prepared to do? You don't have to tell us all of the trade secrets, but what are y'all prepared to do, or what should we be thinking to do beyond the traditional grassroots organizing? Is there anything new that folks on the ground, that universities should be preparing to do, as we face this upcoming midterm without some of the federal and state, support or agencies that we may have had in the past?
So yes, I think that for me, we've been working on a project that I kind of briefly talked about earlier, the Reach the 619, and that the purpose of that project is to only focus on infrequent voters, Black voters, for the 619 project. And what we're doing is this summer we had a summer of democracy, and then we'll have a fall of democracy, where we'll be engaging students on the ground and organizing Black churches and their congregations to do out in a nonpartisan way, to do outreach to the infrequent voters. We're the turn this into a relational organizing strategy where if I'm in a small community like a Bullock County, the likelihood of me knowing the person that I'm calling that's on the infrequent list is more likely than unlikely. Huntsville's a different animal because Huntsville, the people that live in Huntsville, none of them are from Huntsville. And so it's less relational, but the community is a smaller community. And so I think for me, it's organizing, being on the doors to have a conversation about why this election is important, exercising the weakness that's in our absentee law. There are provisions in our absentee laws that allows individuals to be able to vote if they think they're going to be out of town, or they think they're going to be at work on that day, or they're disabled 45 days from the election date, which is, I think, September 19th. And so the goal is for us to push infrequent voters to go and vote in person absentee, if they're eligible for one of the excuses that's on that they could, from a check off on that particular ballot. And so it's easy. We're trying to help them. We're educating them now. And so that's really what can happen. At the end of the day, it's a game of addition. We know who the infrequent voters are. And infrequent, just in case someone doesn't understand, infrequent means, the way we've identified it here in this election cycle, if you voted at least once in the last 4 elections, you're considered infrequent. And then inactive are people that has not voted in the last 4 years, that's been placed on the inactive list through voluntarily, or as the Secretary of State say, there was a mistakenly. And so, but at any rate, targeting those individuals by county is the only path to success. And what this does is a couple things. It sends a message to those individuals that have been ignoring the communities that's being represented. And number two, it makes it very difficult for the other side to redraw lines, because they'll have no clue as to how to redraw the lines if the turnout is at a very high level. And so it'll make it very difficult for them to redraw the lines, which then helps us with either retaining the congressional district that they've tried to take away, as well as helping us expand the electorate as it relates to legislative districts. And so for me, it's fine to register voters, but we have an activation problem more so than anything. I think the registration effort certainly should be on college campuses, but the activation piece is what we have to focus on, and we have to focus on as a unit, which is why we are organizing churches and individuals and all the organizations from the Masons to the Eastern Stars to the fraternity sororities, we're pushing everyone to go back to where it all started. When they marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they didn't march before they planned the march. And where did they plan? They planned in the church. And so we're going back to the basics, and we're engaging young people in this particular effort to help us with organizing congregations. Because in some counties, you have about 30, 40 churches that have signed up that want to participate. And so we're expanding, we're staffing up, but having young people engaged in this will help us get there in organizing these churches at the appropriate time prior to the election, which I think will help us turn out the vote that we really we need, the numbers that we need in order to send a real message in November.
And thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, democracy, it always lands back in the hands of the people. There needs to be people, and the more people, the less likely it is for folks to be able to take advantage or deny democracy to the masses. And so this is the end of our panel. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I wanted to do one quick 30-second, closeout question and response, just to leave everybody with the right side of history in terms of hope back. Let's bring some of that back. What gives you, and I'll start with you, Dr. Fording, in your quickest answer, what is something about this time in American democracy and young voters that truly gives you hope?
Sure. I can give you some hope. 2020, we had youth turnout at 51%. That was phenomenal. And 2024 went down a little bit, but the trajectory has been strong. And one thing that's interesting to me is to see, if you look at the polling data on how young people feel about the current president, it has swung dramatically, like many other segments of the public, in the sort of disapproval direction. And what that tells me is that young people are paying attention, and young people, it swung actually a little bit, young people seem to be less partisan than older people. And I think they're using their judgment, and so I'm encouraged by those two figures.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll go right to you, Representative Daniels. In 30 seconds, what is something right now that gives you hope? How young you are.
What gives me hope right now is the number of young people that I saw engaged in the redistricting fight. It was really led by young people in the committee hearings, from students from all across the state of Alabama, that you really had no idea that they were paying attention, but their presentation and their advocacy was so inspiring to me, which is what led me led us to really trying to engage young people in the upcoming election of leading the efforts. And so seeing that young people are paying attention to politics right now gives me extreme hope about the future of this country and the state.
Thank you. Bernice, what's something right now that lets you sleep well about what young voters are doing?
Well, first of all, what gives me hope is, first of all, the work, first of all, that the Andrew Goodman Foundation is doing and training and preparing people to go out and register people to vote on all these campuses all over the states. And hearing from people, like, I was so encouraged hearing Roderick Morning-Trice talk about, his passion, because in the realization that there were there are foot soldiers before him, and standing on the back of those gives him that kind of inspiration and resilience. And I was so pleased to hear that. And I know that there are a lot of other, I'm encouraged to know that there are a lot of people, after listening, being in on this conference, there's a lot of people out there like him. And they have things, they have, you know, technology, and they have the benefits of learning from the past. Uh, you know, you can't, and they know the mistakes that we made, and they can learn from them. They can't learn from the future. The future's in their hands. And they're not afraid to demand justice and fairness. And they also have the parents, you know, who has enjoyed a kind of democracy up to this time, all of these years. And I know that they don't want to turn back. So they have those people to reach and pull into and talk to. So I'm very encouraged about this, what the young people today. And I just wish them and the very best. And I'm encouraged to even do some things after listening to Congressman Daniel talk about the church going in and because I was wondering what I could do even at my age. And I said, you know, I can go back in the church. That's where we started out. It started in the church and work with some of those voters. And I've worked on the Board of Election, and I know how to find those people. So I'm encouraged about now what I can do. I can add to the table. So I'm very encouraged. I'm very much encouraged. So thank you for this opportunity to participate in this forum.
Thank you so much. And Roger, quickest 30 seconds. Thank you too. What are you encouraged about when you see your peers?
Honestly, the people in the states that are succeeding in the work that we all hold dear. I feel like now more than ever, we're seeing so many leaders of cities and states who are putting people over politics, and I love to see every bit of it. I'm encouraged by all of my peers that join me here. And one thing I do know, we are one of the most vocal generations that I think we have seen. And so knowing that we have that possibility to transform that into, you know, action and mobilization gives me all the hope in the world. So,
well, thank you. And thank you to the entire panel. And thank you to everyone who has worked and fought to make your entire generation feel and have that be a part of the promise of democracy, because to be able to do that is the work that went into doing that. So thank you. I turn it over to Caroline.